Hello and welcome to our first episode of Zevo Talks of the New Year. My name is Pamela Lennon, Psychologist and Wellbeing Consultant for Zevo Health. I'm joined here today, Sarah Keane, Physical Wellbeing Consultant for Zevo. Today we'll be looking at some wellbeing trends for 2022, looking at the challenges and opportunities we've had over the past 2 years, and looking at what the new workplace environment might look like in the coming year. Thanks so much for joining me today, Sarah. So how's the new year going for you so far?
Oh, hi, Pam. Well, look, like so many of us, I've been recovering from COVID. It struck our household there on St. Stephen's Day. And I guess it kind of leads into our first main topic on what so many employees and employers, the most immediate health and well-being issue we're confronted by is managing COVID, the volume of cases at the moment, but also what we're really seeing is that recovery phase and the diversity in individuals' experiences, where some people are really bouncing back and it doesn't take them long to get back to full steam, but that there is a significant percentage of people dealing with the aftermath physically and mentally, with fluctuations in energy levels and mood and brain fog. And this is really posing as quite a significant challenge for individuals, obviously depending on their own severity of experience, but also for employers. And so what we're seeing as the kind of first big thing in the next coming months is how to put supports in place for employers in managing that and in managing staff that are having such a diverse experience in terms of their recovery phase, as well as how to manage employees who are actually like really back to full steam and maybe unaffected by COVID, and the demands placed on them that they're compensating for perhaps having to work extra hours, depends on the industry and the context, but having to work extra hours and pull up. So what we're seeing is like we're developing solutions around how to support both management in terms of developing leadership skills that can support them and their own stress levels as well as well-being solutions like training courses that support positive health behaviors and improved self-awareness. And kind of the backbone of that, I won't talk too much more on this, but it just is it's so pressing at the moment, would be the NHS have a guide, a 3Ps guide, to help both individuals who are managing their illness to pace themselves, to prioritize and to plan, and then how that can also help managers themselves as well, help the employees who are struggling to pace themselves, prioritize and plan. So that's kind of like the first and most pressing issue we're seeing. But I guess as an adjunct to that, and on the back of the healthy staff having extra pressures, you're probably seeing as well an increase in the demand for mental health support. And
absolutely, just following on from the impact of psychologically of having COVID, of being afraid of catching COVID, of people working remotely over the last 2 years, is that there are some worrying mental health trends out there. Up to 60% of the Irish population, I think, have found that their mental health has decreased significantly since the pandemic. And even before this pandemic had kicked off, burnout had become a key issue or a psychosocial stressor in 2019. So you can imagine now, 2 years later, where people are mostly working in isolation and not having that kind of face-to-face engagement with work colleagues, that burnout would have significantly gotten worse. And also what we're seeing is high rates of, emotional exhaustion being reported, particularly last year, even to the level of, people experiencing this kind of existential crisis, because we're so used to, working hard, then we're planning holidays or events or weddings of friends, etc. And when people didn't have this and they were, working in isolation, that they kind of fell into this more of a state of languishing where they're not necessarily flourishing or not necessarily in poor mental health state. But that it's kind of like, not motivated, nothing really to look forward to. And that's where we see this, higher rate of attrition in the workplace, because people are just leaving their jobs without necessarily having another job lined up that would have, previously been the norm there. So
the great resignation.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's maybe, again, that remote working, not being in the office, has really made people reflect more on the work that they do and really evaluate the values of the organization and whether they align with what they really want. Particularly with that existential crisis, people have kind of reevaluated, what's the meaning of life, even like why, if this is all I'm doing, working and then maybe binge watching Netflix shows or on social media, is this it? Not getting, particularly when we're in that 5 kilometer restrictive zone as well. It really, I think, made people think.
It feels like a lifetime ago in a way, but yet we're still grappling with the.
Yeah, I think it had an impact. I think you had some stats on the percentage of those willing to possibly leave their current roles. Do you have that?
So it was the Microsoft Work Index 2021 report, and this feeds into the shift in work models, but they did report that 58% of employees were willing to leave their current position.
Wow.
That flexibility in work environment or working hours and both an environment, whether they could work from home or remotely or on site. They were just willing to take the risk and just leave. So Pam, as you're aware, in our National Wellbeing Survey, top 3 ranked stressors were workload, communication, and management practices. And that kind of leads into the second main theme here around mental health.
I've been listening to some podcasts on psychological health and safety, and basically the thing is about how to understand what psychological safety in the workplace is. It sounds very wordy, it's hard to imagine what it actually is, but it really is all about protecting mental health. It's a preventative measure instead of, trying to maybe address stigma, which is more of a reactive kind of a response. But workload demands, communication, management practices are all what you would call psychosocial risks. And in each organization, there's going to be different psychosocial risks. There could be cases of bullying, there could be just, very demanding KPIs, too much work for people to do. And then that leads to burnout because it's kind of an unsustainable way of working. And what we're really looking at here post-pandemic is how do you maintain your workforce and how do you create a sustainable working environment? And
there are standards now, aren't there, Pam?
Yeah, there was just been released a new globally agreed standard. It's the ISO 45003. And basically that sets out a set of principles by which organizations can work towards to prevent, any psychosocial risks. Where, there's different components of it where you can carry out a psychosocial risk assessment, where basically it's like a health and safety risk assessment. But instead of looking for, opportunities for trips and falls, it's kind of pulling out where, employees can report if they're experiencing, excessive workload demands. It creates a kind of a conversation, a reported conversation with them and their manager. Where, there can be an action then about how that might be rectified. Of course, there's going to be individual cases where people might find work challenging, but it's very important to highlight, that root cause analysis of what's causing this, extended stress.
Is it?
Say that again, sorry?
Oh, sorry. It's almost like a checklist, a guide, framework.
Yeah, and I suppose it makes it more objective rather than subjective, and in a way kind of treating it like health and safety. I remember working in a place many years ago, and the focus was quite strongly on health and safety in, in an office environment that would be inherently physically safe, you would think, as opposed to a warehouse, for example.
Absolutely.
But the lack of focus on psychological risks always kind of bamboozled me, really, because it was such a stressful environment. There was even trips and falls and accidents because of that high pressure, high stress environment. And I just wondered, why is the focus on something that is actually of much lower risk than the mental health impact of the work environment that was there? So I'm delighted as a result to see, this prioritization of psychological safety, unfortunately post-pandemic, because it's really kind of put a spotlight on mental health because of the challenges over the last 2 years. People are more comfortable about talking about, mental health in the workplace and how it's affected them, trying to look after their children while trying to work as well. So I think it's a very good thing to see coming across globally. And just to mention, it's Australia and Canada that are really leading the way in the policy and guidelines for psychological safety. But it's something for 2022 that Zevo are looking to create some services around that in terms of risk assessments and gaining accreditation with that ISO as well.
So employers have the support and kind of have a framework, or even know where to start with this.
Where to start, what it is and how it applies into each individual organization. It'll depend on the style, the industry, and the size of the organization as well. So it's always important to get that root cause analysis of, maybe doing a well-being audit of like, what are the key issues here, and what's so important, especially with attrition in a lot of the McKinsey reports, is like asking your employees how they're feeling instead of assuming that this is what's going on as
opening the dialogue
which is so important. And the importance of compassionate leadership and that empathy is more relevant and important now than ever before, I think, as well, rather than your process focused, all about the job. People are really searching for quality relationships with their colleagues and their managers, and feeling valued in your job.
So with that mental health at center stage, and it's really kind of on the back of what I just mentioned around the recovery of COVID, mental health, we all are so interdependent.
The biggest and most exciting workplace wellbeing competition is returning. The Fittest Workplace Challenge 2022. The Fittest Workplace Challenge 2022 is a company versus company wellbeing challenge that pushes organizations to measure up against themselves to ensure they are not just improving the health and well-being of their employees, but also creating fantastic engagement and keeping spirits high within their organization. Hosted through our Zevo Health technology, we keep your employees connected and engaged while promoting positive well-being, no matter where in the world they are. Do you think your company has what it takes to be titled the Fittest Workplace 2022? If so, contact us today for more information. ZevoHealth.com.
So the first two trends we've discussed, recovery from COVID, mental health at the fore then, and these themes all, of course, so interdependent and interwoven. It really feels that it leads into the kind of third big trend and the third topic, I guess, that at the fore of most employers' minds in coming months and into the rest of the year is this management of the hybrid work model, and for some individuals working remotely long term, which was never foreseen at the start. It was always a couple of months and then it just snowballed. And so what we're seeing is like a surge in employees' demand for and expectation for flexibility. And the Microsoft 2021 Work Index of a survey of over 30,000 employees, it was like 70% of employees are demanding this hybrid work model. And for some employers, of course, that's possible depending again on industry and context. But for some employers, that can be quite challenging, particularly those who want their employees showing up on site and for things like innovation and that communication piece you spoke about, that can be so much stronger in person. So another trend that we're seeing in navigating this is like, well, providing supports for remote workers, for managing hybrid setup, because McKinsey reports it's over 60% of companies don't have a hybrid plan. But we're also seeing that the evolution of the office environment and the actual redesign of the workplace, and that employees wanting, if they are going to return to the office, that they have a lot of the perks or the features that were so lovely about working at home in the office. So we're seeing things like, and I know this seems kind of incidental, but more casual dress code, for example, a shift in having more resiliency spaces available, how to air quality is at the fore of so many
ventilation, certainly,
ventilation, which was not on anyone's radar, very few people's radar 2 years ago. And so we're seeing this a real surge in interest from employers around how can they make that office environment more enticing, and not only from the health and safety perspective, as you mentioned before, but it's like, how do you create spaces, workspaces that actually really cultivate well-being? And so kind of dovetails on that ISO safety standards,
Yeah, and it kind of changes the whole workplace environment, because if you're working in that hybrid space, you want to bring people in for collaboration, for meetings, but also in those meetings, you'll need your cameras and microphones, because some people will be remote. So it's going to be a challenge for management to manage this, as well as contact tracing and, managing of hot desks, who's going to be in, who isn't. So it will definitely be key to start planning, how this might look or how it might be managed. And it'll take a lot of flexibility as well, and to accommodate for that flexibility and connectedness. I thought there were two key themes in the research that were coming through in terms of
a lot of trial and error, error. And I guess the key here is like personalization, isn't it? Like, some people want to be in the office and thrive there, and others, it's how to kind of support meeting the diverse needs and preferences is a big challenge. Just around the workplace piece as well, and the evolution of the on-site and managing the hybrid, we are also seeing another big trend is a greater integration of technology in terms of supporting employees' well-being. With the COVID tracker app, for example, we saw how technology can play such a powerful part in promoting health and also supporting individuals through the challenge. So what we are also seeing is this translating into the workplace, and employers now and employees alike being more receptive and open to using technology and technological support. So such as even things like online EAP programs to talk with a counsellor or a therapist, having your webinars, courses, trainings, just at the touch of an app. And so we're seeing how technology can be used by employers as a way to create sort of cohesion between staff that may be working mostly remotely and those that are working on site. So just a tiny example of that would be something like our Fittest Workplace Challenge, where you can have teams of employees that are some on site, seeing each other every day, but working closely with other employees who are working remotely towards a common goal, towards a challenge that's novel and fun. And it seems like these something like a 2-week challenge, it's just an accessory, and yet now we're seeing how actually it can play such a powerful part, a fundamental part in supporting that kind of cohesion, collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that lack of connectedness we've had over the last year or two, lack of poor communication as well. So you can only imagine the development in, technology for keeping people connected in a hybrid or remote or, on-site environment. That mix is going to be really important, I think, that way as well. You had mentioned when we were chatting yesterday about financial well-being being a new trend that's emerging.
Yeah, so we're seeing financial well-being starting to feature in kind of these more holistic, whole person approaches and programs that employers are implementing. So we're going beyond just diet and exercise and really expanding that. So we're seeing that in 2022, that more employers are looking at supporting their employees financially through information and resources, but also looking at increasing PTO. We've seen the mandatory sick leave coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So really appreciating how something like our finances is such a bedrock or foundation flagstone of our well-being. But like there's our national well-being survey, for example, showed that one of the positive impacts of COVID on well-being was for some individuals, their finances really improved. So what we have to appreciate is the diversity. Some individuals were really hit hard in the last 2 years on PUP or furlough, whatever it may have been. And then other individuals have never been financially sounder. So, it's back to the point we're making at the very start, where, you're as an employer having to accommodate such a diverse experience in your workforce. One large scale survey showed that 37% of technical professionals are living paycheck to paycheck, and 57% are struggling financially or have suffered significantly in the last 2 years. So there is, as I said, a diverse range. Some people are very healthy, but there is a worrying percentage of individuals financially struggling. And as an employer, this is something to really factor in when you're looking at promoting the health of your workforce and really supporting your staff.
Yeah, so people are at various stages across the scale of various scales of financial or mental well-being or physical health as well. So it's, so I think in that instance, you would need a kind of well-being strategy that accommodates for, targets various areas, maybe having financial well-being training, maybe having your fittest workplace challenge, maybe resilience training skills or mental health training, or something that is a pick and mix that each of their employees can kind of, opt in for if they find that it's relevant to them. I think as well, just in terms of global trends, and from what I'm reading in reports, is that well-being has to move beyond your yoga classes and mindfulness classes. It has to be more ingrained into a well-being strategy where initiatives have, an overarching theme for the year over the next 3 or 4 years, and endorsed by leadership as well. It's a time to really get serious about well-being. You can imagine if people are burnt out, if the workload demands are so high, that giving them an extra day or a week off, which some in the States have provided, it falls short of being genuine about well-being, because they're going to come back to, a high workload again, or a backlog even. So it's not really addressing the key issues of why those problems are there. It has to be, as you said, a holistic approach, and really, looking at the organizational factors. Are there policies that could be created that would improve communication, or, iron out why workload is so high or demanding, or supports for, giving employees autonomy over how they do their work, and that flexibility, which keeps coming through as well, about how important that is now for people who have been through a challenging 2 years and really want their work to work for them in a sense as well.
Absolutely. It's like the systemic, you're kind of talking about that culture shift, which kind of ties up nicely what we saw last year, an increasing number of employers that really want to confront exactly what you've just said, the deeper operational issues that are leading to imbalances in well-being and kind of diminishing their employees' resources mentally and emotionally. And so, that sincere culture shift and that demand for employers really kind of taking that closer look. And the different tiers also, like a well-being program and offering trainings and information comes in on that, but on a kind of a more on a more
authentic, I think, is what needs to occur as well. Yeah. Authentic leadership. I often see trainings where it's teaching leaders how to be a certain way, but it just boils down to simply caring, or at least pretending to care about how your employees are, without being too invasive as well. But again, sorry.
As you know, like with the work we've been doing with Alex Edmonds on our advisory board, and he's pioneered work in this field to show that the companies that really care, that even park the metrics to a certain extent and just choose, place their employees and all stakeholder health and vitality at the fore, they inevitably profit their share. They might see in the first couple of years that there's no immediate return, but the long-term share value in these companies is exponentially increases. So it's like doing good as that kind of core value inevitably will generate a more profitable, sustainable, successful business. He has some compelling research on it, and it's worth checking out his.
Yeah, and I think overall there's so many positives of what's evolving currently. After those challenging 2 years, we have this hybrid model becoming available, a change, a shake up of the traditional workspace as well, where our desks were practically our second homes. And and trying to bring a bit of bring back that connection and quality connection as well. It's kind of a clean slate almost, and a real change and a progression in that work isn't some place that's supposed to be tough and challenging and you come home exhausted and you have no energy for your family or friends. That it's just really evolving now, and it's a perfect time to really kind of develop a new way of working. So it's, even though we did drill into some, root cause analysis, that overall I think it's a really positive shift globally for how we work.
Yeah, the positive side of disruption with that. What is it called? Post-traumatic growth.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So thank you for listening to another episode of Zevo Talks, and thanks to Sarah for joining me today. If you'd like to know more about psychological safety at work, or managing the transition to hybrid working model, or anything we've discussed today, you can reach out to us at zevohealth.com.